So I want to introduce you to a concept, something that the board of URISA has just approved yesterday, the URISA Labs. It's a spot where Hillary Perkins over there and Claire Brown, I don't see her, she's in the back somewhere, and myself are working on to try and bring knowledge and gain understanding of the GIS profession. Ed Wells was doing, whoa, wow. Ed Wells was doing some research and came across a description where they were discussing in 1977 that we needed to understand successes and failures to be able to understand how to further the profession. We came up with this idea of the URISA Labs. I'm going to catch up in a second because I put that slide in twice. We're going to start with a question that's answerable. And each lab is going to investigate the options and potential behind the question and come to white papers and publish them within the journal and conferences and publish our successes and failures here and give final guidance to things like the Geospatial Management Institute and the URISA Journal so that we can make the profession better. I'm ahead now. Great. So the URISA Lab sits here and the GMI sits here and the body of knowledge sits here and conferences are way up there and all these things talk to each other and every little bit connects to each other but nothing is in control and nothing is the central part. So there's this coordinating committee with Hillary and Claire. We're trying to stand up some initial labs. We've gotten nowhere so far, but we're just now starting with trying to talk about a lab about address data sharing. Can we actually share data between local governments? Semantic web for addressing, we'll touch that later, and sustainable e-sig. So within addressing, can governments share data, semantic webs? Is there some commonality between address data that we see on the web that we can actually make sense of? And e-sigs, and do they go forward? So address data sharing, there's FGDC address standard, there's the NINA data standard, there's IETF PIDFlow, there's USPS, there's others. There's lots and lots of address data standards. People are publishing data in all sorts of flavors. Is there any sort of commonality that when we look at the outputs of these formats, we can build systems that understand all of it at one time? Can we build a system that understands the data and not worry about the model behind the data that we're seeing? And can we use those systems to translate data? Big questions. Right now, we're doing things like building data profiles. Ed Wells is working on a whole bunch of data profiles. Ed Wells. We're working on tools, working on automated software. But these things have limits because we only can work and build profiles and tools for things we know. Ontology allows us to work with things we don't know. If we understand what we're seeing, we can go further. Things like Sparkle allows us to query automated sessions against the data. Ontology web language allows us to define it, and then there's artificial intelligence built on top of it. There are groups within the federal, state, and local entities that are building ontology systems to go and pull data that's been published off of the web so that we don't have to understand the underlying data models. So how do we do this? Well, the semantics protect us from things like standard proliferation. Everybody can have their own standard. Everybody can have their own data model. But it allows us to focus on the meaning of the information being presented, not the model behind it. So there's another lab we're trying to look at, sustainable e-sigs. We have these since 1986. We've been awarding exemplary systems in government. Are any of these sustainable? Are any of these repeatable? We don't know. My voice is changing. So, can any of the awardees serve as a basis for an exemplary system that's repeatable, that we can set up as a best practice and promulgate out through GMI? Our e-sigs, they're part of software, they're part of hardware, they're part of people. That's made up of community and leadership, built on standards. Are any of these things repeatable? Or are they just perfect things that stand alone, that are unrepeatable? The URISA labs are going to focus on things like the management of system information. They're not going to be focused on software. They're not going to be competing with our vendors and our vendor partners. They're going to help us figure out how things plug together and how to put things together that are useful and repeatable. That the URISA labs answer the questions being asked. The GMI needs these questions to be asked to be able to establish best practices and the best way forward. Labs can also undertake broader sets of questions than the GMI can take on because we have a broader access to just any question that we can posit. Sometime, I don't know, Wendy said she was going to schedule a URISA lab meeting after 6 o'clock one night somewhere near a bar here, and I encourage all of you to come. all right?